Good evening, everyone, to tonight's episode of Profound States. Tonight we have a very special guest. Her name is Debz Shakti. She's a professional quantum hypnotherapist, an open channel. She offers professional size services, including Energy Alchemy, ET Contact, and Paranormal Experience Counseling. She hosts a long-standing local CE5 contact and consciousness group. She's an active member of several international CE5 contact teams. She leads retreats and researches the infinite nature of consciousness. She's the associate producer of the new top-rated film, Alien Abduction Answers. Her work as the quantum hypnotherapist, assisting John Yost, the filmmaker, as well as with all the experiences in the film, is featured. She has many decades of professional service working with such people and many others seeking self-discovery and clarity about the nature of consciousness. Debz Shakti was born with most of what she affectionately calls her superpowers switched on, what others may call the psi gifts. She cherishes a lifetime of daily, almost constant contact with the various forms of consciousness, including ETs, interdimensionals, orbs, celestials, ultra-terrestrials, and more. She has always perceived and been able to live, work, multidimensionally. She channels the ultra-wise group entity known as the Star Teachers, as well as other highly advanced beings who say they are us, having evolved to a much higher, more positive and co-creative frequency. She works with all types of energy, healing modalities, and she is a lifelong yogi and yoga breath work, meditation, and mantra teacher. She also spent much of her life as a competitive athlete and as a former national champion martial artist, published author, and much more. She loves everyone, our planet, and everything that makes up life. She is doing her best to work out her purpose and dharma to assist as many as possible to become consciously balanced and sustained in self-awareness, most of all to be and share and teach love. Welcome to tonight's episode of Profound States, Deb. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well, and I'm very excited to be on the show. What an honor. Thank you so much, Mike.
So let me put myself in the picture here. You got some interesting books that are behind you. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Some of my favorite books are back there.
So I guess we'll jump right into it. So what was the very first odd or unusual experience you remember in your lifetime at the earliest?
Oh, gracious. Well, the earliest one that I'm real clear on, I'm pretty sure I've had them since birth, but maybe pre-birth, but I think I was probably 2.5, 3 years old. And by then my mom had already had at least one or two. We had four. I have 3 siblings. We were born 4 kids in less than 5 years. So you can imagine my mom was pretty tired by the time she put me to bed. And our little house in California where we lived, my bedroom had a glass wall. So you could see the whole backyard and beautiful trees and garden and everything. And I can remember being sound asleep but awakened by a tapping on that window, on that wall, on that glass. And I woke up and I looked, and next to the wall was my favorite tree that I like to play under. And there were all these little creatures in the trees, and they were saying, "Come out and play with us." And at the time, I was a toddler, so I didn't really think about it, but their mouths weren't moving. It was telepathic communication. And so, I was a good little child. I didn't just get up and go outside. I went and asked my mom for permission, woke her up and said, and I don't know why I said this, but I said, "Mama, the space monkeys are in my tree and they want me to come out and play with them for a while. Can I go outside, please?" And she said, "Oh, honey, you're having a dream. Come on, let's put you back to bed and everything." And let me just stop here and say I was at most 3 years old. I had never heard of or been exposed to anything about space or outer space yet. And if I knew anything about monkeys, it was probably from the set of encyclopedias we had in our house. I don't think I'd been to the zoo yet, but somehow I called them space monkeys. And she put me back to bed and, tucked me in and said nighty night. She looked out the window and didn't see anything, of course, as always happens. And, about 15 minutes later, tap, 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 there they were again. And they were even more strongly encouraging me to come out. So I got up again and went through this whole process 3 or 4 times. And each time my mom was getting more and more irritated. Poor thing. She was big pregnant with the next child, had probably had to deal with the baby, and was continuously having to put me to bed. So she was getting a little annoyed. And she finally, after the 3rd or 4th time, said, shook her finger at me and she said, listen, I don't ever want to hear you speak about those space monkeys again. You go to sleep and don't get out of the bed until I get you up in the morning. And that was it. And I was terrified of being punished by my mom. I love my mom. So I didn't. And I never spoke of them again until I was, in my later teens. But I never stopped having contact. I had contact all my life, every day of my life. It's just a part of my life. I just thought everybody else lived that way. I had overlays of different families, even, living in the same space as my family, but interdimensionally with full blown, I was part of the family. They had names. The dad had a job and the mom did this and kids did this and this is what they wore. My parents just thought I was really, really imaginative. But, by the time it was time to go to kindergarten, it was very apparent that other people didn't live that way, didn't perceive that way. And my parents told me to stop talking about all that made up stuff, in quotes. To go back to the space monkeys, though, years and years and years later, when finally I was exposed to things about space and contact and all that, I realized they were pretty much the consummate little grays. They were, little tiny creatures, little skinny bodies, long limbs, big heads, big almond eyes. And I do remember around the almond eyes, there was kind of like little white on the face, small mouth, very non-apparent nose or ears at the time. So I now know those were, grays, but they were playful. They were friends, and they came often. I just didn't talk about them anymore. So that was the first real memory of contact that I had.
So what did you end up doing with them? I mean, they tapped on the window over and over. Did you ever actually go with them?
Yes. Now, I don't know if I did that night because I was tiny, and I really, oddly, I'm wondering why I've never gone into regress back to that first situation to see if there was more, and I'm pretty sure there was. But a few years later, my dad was in the military, and then moved into the Justice Department. So my whole childhood, we moved so that he could promote. That's just how it was in the federal government and in the military. You took, higher positions elsewhere and they'd move you. So we moved to southern Georgia when I was about 9 from California. And blissfully, we're in, little tiny yard in near LA where, you can imagine the houses and yards are quite small and squished together, to this very large house on the edge of town near the Air Force Base. And there were probably 65 miles of pine forest on the edge of our yard. We were on the very edge of town, and that's all there was behind our house. Talk about kids' paradise, right? So a very monumental encounter from childhood happened there. And I'm always grateful for it, but always puzzled by it. I was asleep in my bed, and my brother, who is, like I said, was just a little less than a year younger than I, woke me up out of dead sleep, and he said, "The woods are on fire. We have to go. We have to go out there." And I don't know why I agreed, because, you don't sneak out of the house when you're a little kid, especially in our family, but you certainly don't go run towards a forest fire. But we did. We put our clothes on and we went out in the woods and we ran till we got to the big meadow where we liked to play. And we had a fort there or something, I can't remember. But there was it looked like a fire as we were getting closer to it. It was all lit up. But when we got to the meadow, it was a huge mothership hovering over the meadow. All the lights, all the sounds. Later years, I will tell you, it looked almost exactly like the mothership at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg. But that was, a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades later. And to this day, the first time I saw that movie and saw that mothership, I almost cried. I thought, how did he see the same thing I saw? Right. And so it was very sobering and very exciting. But to get back to that encounter, all I remember were like the pine needles and the twigs and the little rocks on the forest floor were levitating. There was so much energy there, and there were beautiful sounds or kind of music. And we were just transfixed. And the next thing I know, it's the next morning and my brother's waking me up again, pointing at our dirty, muddy clothes in the corner, saying, hide the clothes and never promise. We're going to take a blood brother oath right now. We're never going to talk about this to anyone because we didn't want to get in trouble for sneaking out of the house. But as soon as we had breakfast, we went out to play like kids were let out to play, back in those days. Just go anywhere and come back at dinner. We ran back out there, and that meadow was burnt and it was smoldering. It was completely black, a big black smoldering circle where that ship had been hovering over. And so, that was very compelling. Later years, I did go through a regression with a colleague of mine and found out that we were taken, up into the ship, not just that time, but many, many, many times, to what my friend, the great author Whitley Strieber, who's in our movie, used to call the secret school, where they were showing us screens of the earth and the people of the earth and the animals and everything, and what could happen if we don't, start taking care of it. From age 9, and this is very important that from age 9, from that moment on, and I didn't realize it until later years when I had this regression, I was a very avid eco-activist. I still am. And a civil rights person and fighting for all the good things on the earth. And I know it's because we were taken up and kind of guided or groomed by these people to help in our lifetime. So that was a really compelling one.
So what city, let me turn my light down. What city in Southern Oregon I live just north of Atlanta. So I'm in Georgia now. And
fun. We were outside of Macon.
Macon, Georgia.
Yeah, it was actually at Warner Robins Air Force Base, if you know where that is. If it's still even there. I don't know if Warner Robins Base is still there.
I don't know where that is. I'm not even sure where Macon is, but I assume it's a couple
South
hours.
Central or something like that.
Is it like at least 1 or 2 hours south of Atlanta? Or more than that?
I think it may be north of Atlanta. So
no, Atlanta is in the north part of the state.
Oh, okay. So it is in south. I lived in Atlanta for several years as an adult, and I'm still lost geographically, and I don't know why. Other than that's another little thing. It's like I'm really good with directions and so forth, but when it comes to where I lived as a child, I have a hard time recalling logistics. It's really crazy. So like that, I can't bring up the map in my head and say.
That's okay.
So it was about couple hours probably from Atlanta.
Okay, so when was the first time you remember either close contact with the Greys or onboard experiences? What was the youngest you remember that part of it?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think I remember hearing you say this, and so I know that you can relate, but I never had a designation of these are ETs and these are angels and these are, interdimensionals or whatever. These are ghosts. I just always knew them as other people, just like I thought all animals were other people, they just look different than us. So, so very early on, and they were always really kind and good. I have never, by the way, Mike, I've never had a scary or a negative close encounter, by the way, or paranormal experience. Now, I've had some pretty intense ones, but I'm not afraid of anything because I've had 2 NDEs, and one was when I was a small child. So get to that later.
You can go through that.
Go ahead. Well, you were asking when, like, the first time I had like a real knowledge of interacting with the beings, really from earliest childhood. Like I said, I think I probably had screen images or screen memories, saying those were my other family, living there. But I think they were, still the beings. So really from an early age, probably 3-4 years old.
Hold on for a second. I need to give my wife her food. She's had a stroke, so I have to.
Oh, fine. Go ahead.
I'll be right back.
Sure.
Tell us about okay, so since you had an ND as a young child, go ahead and go there. We'll just move forward from there.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I think I was probably, I don't know, 11 or so, 10 or 11. My father was originally from deep Cajun country in Louisiana, and my mother was from Oklahoma, and then, both Depression age kids. Grew up real poor, but we were, I believe we're still living in Georgia, and we drove to Louisiana to go see a couple of our relatives, especially my favorite cousins. And they were all our age. So we had a lot of fun. We were really close, even though we didn't live close together. When we got together, we would have so much fun. We make plays and skits and, do all kinds of activities. So I was super stoked to see my cousins, and we traveled and got, I think they were in Shreveport at the time. We drove and just as we were coming into town, a huge violent storm happened, and it was just pouring rain, and it was flooding and lightning and so forth. We drove into the driveway, and everybody came pouring out of the house to greet us, and we children jumped out of the car, myself included, to go give everybody hugs. And as I jumped out of the car, I slid in a big pool of water on the driveway slipped and hit my head, and I cracked my skull, and I went out of my body. Everybody was, there was so much activity and everything. Nobody even realized I had fallen and gone unconscious and, probably coded out for at least a minute or two. Everybody, it's just a flurry of activity. But what happened in that time for me was I went out of my body and I saw myself on the driveway in the pouring rain and that water, and there was some blood and everybody was hugging and everything. And I just laughed. I thought, oh, well, I guess I over jumped and I jumped out of my body and now nobody could see me. And then about that time, I saw a really bright white light, and I heard some of that music again. And that's kind of interesting. It was almost the same kind of music that I heard from that mothership. And it made me feel peaceful and okay. Like I wasn't scared. I was just fascinated. I was always a very scientific child, very inquisitive. In fact, my first word was why. But instead of being scared or freaked out, I just thought, I jumped out of my body. That's odd. But the music was there, and I could see shadows of what looked like my friends, or my other family starting to come towards me. And then I thought, oh gosh, I want to say hi to my cousins. And immediately I came back into my body, and I had a lot of pain, of course, big headache. And I had this kind of jaggedy thing, rainbow line in front of my eyes for several days. My parents, thought I was okay. So, and, they were on vacation. They weren't paying attention, I guess. And they didn't know, I probably had a severe concussion, might have had brain damage, I don't know. But, put a Band-Aid on my head and said, go play. And, so I came back. But from that time on, I remember not being afraid. Like I used to be afraid of jumping off the high dive at the pool or, doing certain things. And from that time on, I was pretty fearless, and I have been my whole life. I've done a lot of extreme kind of, physical things as well as, challenging things in my life, just because I know that we don't die. From that point on, I knew we didn't die. And I probably knew it before then, to be honest, but that was kind of validation. I just, at that time, I just looked down and I thought, I'm out of my body, but my body's just kind of like a spacesuit. By that time, I was really into NASA and astronauts and everything. And I could see that my body was a spacesuit that I used to walk around in this world. But I was in this other world and I didn't need it because it was my home, right? So I didn't need any environmental support, so to say. So ever since then, I've been really, really okay with just about everything and open to everything because, as I grew up, I became very interested in the sciences, and I studied all the regular sciences, but then once quantum physics came around where you could actually access some of the material, it really helped me to understand, energy, the law of thermodynamics. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form and function via its vibrational frequency, the way that it's moving. And so I just thought, well, that explains everything. I'm part of this, and I'm never going to die. I'm just going to change my form when I want to or when I'm forced to, and I'll have another adventure that way. And I had another NDE when I was an adult, but that was due to a very grave illness. And that one really cemented it for me because I really did. I had to make a decision that time whether to stay or come back. But I was a mother by that time and I wanted to come back for my kids. So I chose to come back, but boy, it was really painful to come back.
So which did you have first, the encounter with your brother with the mothership or the NDE as a child?
Oh, the mothership. That was about age 9, and then I think the NDE was about age 11.
Okay. So take us to the next encounter you had with anything unusual after that.
No, goodness. Well, like I said, I have encounters. I really don't even call them encounters. It's just interactions every day. I'm trying to think of things that might be really interesting to your audience. You know, I don't just interact with one group of beings, which I think is pretty interesting. For instance, I have a really cool friend who's a mantis being, but it's blue. It's not a green mantis. It's very large, and it's a very powerful healer, very gentle, very kind, and it comes and goes when it's needed to help me or to help me help others. You know, I do a lot of the healing work, and my friend often comes in to help with that or to show new things. I have had beings pop in and out while I'm, you know, I've always been a yoga teacher since I was 15, and I'm 67 now, so you can imagine how many years of yoga teaching. But I would be walking around the room and instructing, and they'd just appear and you know, be among the people, and I could see if it was a large class especially, and there were some people who were nervous or whatever, and I couldn't get to everybody at one time, one of them would just go over and place their hands or their energy hands on the person, and instantly you just see them kind of just kind of relax into the pose, which I always thought was interesting. Very early on, I realized what was coming out of my mouth during classes and even in presentations in school and everything. I'm highly educated, but I think what they do is they take the information that's in my little bitty flash drive of a brain, and then they use that to channel words through my vocal cords to present to other people. So a lot of what has come out in the years and the decades in my classes and workshops, and even in my, you know, especially in my sessions, in conference presentations and so forth, I just kind of get out of the way, and those friends help me by bringing information through. And that may be part of why I'm here on Earth. I'm able to just open up and access what I call the cloud. You know, I call this the spacesuit. I call my brain a flash drive because it's just a tiny little thing compared to what the cloud would be, you know, which holds all the information. And then, you know, the software is consciousness. So, but I've always been able to access the cloud, or what people call the Akashic record or universal mind or whatever, to bring information through for whomever I'm with. So I think that may be one of my purposes on life, is just to become a mouthpiece for the higher levels of our being who want to speak to us here and help us move up a notch or two, to kind of be where they are.
So go to, of all the experiences you've had with the Greys and your Mantis and any other, how many different races do you interact with?
Countless. I'm always, when I think I've seen it all, there's something else, you know, and not all of them are even in physical form. In fact, a lot of them aren't in physical form. But I can tell you another really cool one if you want. And this one happened maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. I'm an avid OBE practitioner and lucid dreamer. And I was in a lucid dream, I thought, but it was just really physical. I was in our bedroom and I was standing in front. We have a big floor to ceiling mirror in our bedroom, you know, to get dressed in front of and everything. And I was talking to my husband, and my husband had his back to the mirror and he was facing me. I was talking to my husband about something mundane, and then suddenly I could see in the mirror behind me standing was this kind of 7.5, 8 foot tall being who looked exactly like the pharaoh Akhenaten. And I don't know if you're familiar with what Akhenaten looked like, but he was a very different looking kind of guy.
He had extended skull on the back, right?
Yes, and he had very unique features. His, you know, long face, kind of differently shaped body, and Akhenaten, of course, he was very instrumental in Egypt in changing the whole belief system from you know, multiple deities to monotheism. They worshipped
they didn't like him too much,
and they didn't like him very much, right? And he was also the father of Tutankhamun. So anyway, I'm looking and I thought, what is Akhenaten doing in my bedroom? And instead of turning around, I just spoke to him in the mirror and I said, "Are you Akhenaten?" And he just smiled, and again, telepathically. And I say empathically. I don't say telepathically, because I think it's more than verbal, it's feelings. Telepathically, I received from him as he was smiling, "No, but I'm where Akhenaten was seated from." And he said, I'm the progenitor of that race, which you're from as well. And he said, "I'm here to show you something." And I said, "Oh, wonderful, thank you." And I said, "What is it?" And he just pointed this long, really long finger at my left shoulder and top of my back. And I said, "Well, I can't see that. I can't see my back." And he said, "Of course you can." And instantly I had all dimensional sight. You know, I could see anything I wanted. And there were all these lines of symbols that looked kind of like hieroglyphs, but they weren't. And they were glowing, tattooed into my skin or embedded into my skin. And I said, what is that?" And he said, "That's your mission statement." And I said, "But I don't understand it." And he said, "In time you will. And when it's the right time, you'll be activated and you'll be able to perform everything you came here to perform. But just remember, it's there and it's working on you right now. It's kind of a time released activation." And I can still see it in my head. And I've tried several times to kind of draw it out, but every time I do, it's almost like I get my hand slapped. Like nobody's supposed to see that. So anyway, I asked if he had a name. It felt male. And he said, "Yes, my name is Frillian." And he put in my mind how it's spelled. It's not spelled anything like it sounds, and it's really difficult to spell. I always have to write it down. But Frillian has been with me as my kind of, I call him my ET best friend, for about 10, 11, 12 years. I can't even remember what date it was. But he is a very strong counsel, and he's saved me a few times from making some really big what I would call mistakes or bad choices, including just switching lanes on a very busy freeway and almost getting killed by a semi. He came up in my face just as I was driving, just full on, and said, "Don't do it." I was getting ready to just switch over, and as he said that, here came a semi, and I would have been probably killed had I even moved an inch over a second before. So he's a pretty good pal, but he has given me a lot of information about, I just want to say nudges to even go and do my own homework. He's always telling me, "You have to do your own homework," about some of the ancient cultures, about pyramid energy, about sacred geometry, about all the sacred megalithic monuments on our planet. As you know, all of them that I know of are aligned with certain special constellations, and they have special properties and special energies. Um, he's just been a real good friend. So he's been monumental in my life too. Um, so that's a pretty, that I always thought that was interesting. And he comes into my meditations. He's really helped give me new tools and so forth. And then really monumentally, I can't even say now how long ago it's been, probably around that time too, when I was seeing people in a physical office. I see most of my clients virtually now, but I used to run a big wellness center actually, and then finally closed it down. It got too expensive and, you know, cumbersome. And I had an office in my home, and I had a woman come to see me for an energy session. She had been given a gift certificate that her sister had bought for her, and she was a terminal cancer patient. And basically, she had tried everything. She didn't believe in any of the stuff I do, by the way. She was totally like not interested. But she had pretty much been sent home to get her affairs in order. She'd tried everything, and it was almost time for her to be on hospice. And her sister just kept saying, please use the gift certificate. If nothing else, she's a nice lady, and you might enjoy just having someone new to talk to for an hour or two. And she might make you feel better and more comfortable. So she came begrudgingly, and she told me so when she came in. And so to make her comfortable, I had a massage table with the whole setup with a bolster so she could be comfortable, and a blanket, an eye pillow. And I started doing the energy work that I do, which is a compilation of many, many types of energy systems that I came in knowing how to do, that I've been taught from the beings since I was born. And also because I have a very curious mind, I have taken lots of coursework in many kinds of, formal certified energy services like Reiki and Hands of Light and Core Star and things like that. So I started doing some energy work on her, and I was just, breathing and trying to get her comfortable. And I could just see all kinds of things in her energy field that were causing her illness. And then suddenly the ceiling of my office opened up, and that mothership was right over the house, over the office, the same mothership as when I was a kid. And I was just flabbergasted because I hadn't seen it other than in the movie since I was a kid. And I thought, what in the world is this? And then suddenly at the foot of the massage table, there was a group of, I believe it was 4 beings who, again, were about 7 feet tall. And they were humanoid, they were bipedal, but it looked like they were made out of black glass. And they had the kind of oval face, but there were no eyes, no mouth, no nothing. And they didn't have clothes on, but you could see kind of through the black glass, and there were all these streams of light, colored light moving in them. And it was almost as if you could see the universe inside of them. They're the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And, this is my life, so I wasn't shocked, but I asked who they were, and they just said, we've always been with you, and we're here to help you with this very difficult situation, because she has more work to do here. And she gave up on herself, and we want to show you how you can help her believe in herself again. So one of them came behind me and literally, I don't even know how to explain this, Mike, but literally like slipped my body on, like how you've seen nurses hold a sterile gown up for a surgeon before he goes into surgery, and they hold it up, and the surgeon puts his arms in the sleeves, and then they tie it up. That being came back and just put my body on that way. And I could feel it in my body, and it was moving my hands and moving and pushing energy through my body, through my hands and my eyes around in unison with the other beings who were doing things with this lady. And it felt the best. I've never felt so good in my life. It was the biggest high I've ever felt. And she was smiling, like she was in a trance or asleep, I thought, but she was smiling, and her body was relaxed. And so we worked on her, and they gave me some new techniques energetically to do, and work on her soul, and work on her physical DNA even. So and then after a while, it just felt like it was complete, and the being came out of my body. They all stood at the bottom of the table and just kind of bowed like this. I bowed to them and thanked them, and then it was over, and we were back in a regular space. So at the end of my sessions, I always, I ground the person, bring them back, and offer them water or have them drink water so that they can kind of come back in their body. And before I ever say anything about what happened in the session, I always ask, do you have any questions? Well, first of all, I always say, how do you feel? And the lady said, and her eyes were really big when she sat up, and she sat up without help, which before she could barely get around without help. She said, I'm perfect. I'm absolutely perfect. And she was just beaming. And I said, oh, I'm so glad you feel better. And she said, no, you don't understand. I'm perfect. Like, I'm not only just healed, perfectly healed, but I'm perfect. I realize I'm perfect. And I'm excited about things that I've never thought about for a long time that I need to do. And she was just giddy. And then she said, you'll never believe what happened. I had a dream that your ceiling opened up and there was a huge spaceship over the house, and these people who were made of black glass, came in and helped, and they rewired me or something and healed me. And then they were gone. And she said, I don't believe in any of that, but now what? And I said, well, how do you feel? And she said again, I feel perfect. And I said, then I think you might want to start believing in a little bit more than you thought was possible before. And she just laughed. And so come to find out, yeah, she had a follow-up appointment, I think a couple of weeks after, and she had no cancer markers in her body. It was a miracle healing. And as far as I know, to this day, she's still alive and doing great things. She became a person who was helpful to immigrants who are having problems, and downtrodden people, women without partners who had come from domestic violence and all that. So she began working as a social worker and so forth. So anyway, after that night, these beings were in my head, and they were in my house, and wherever I was, that's where they were. And they basically, they wouldn't shut up, and they haven't since. And they are very insistent, and they said, I kept thanking them. I just thanked them because she was in so much pain. And they said, well, this isn't over. We've been with you your whole life. And now we have more work to do. So in 2 weeks, we want you to offer an open kind of gallery here at your house and invite anyone who wants to come to ask us questions. And we'll have an open forum, and we'll do a group healing service as well for them. And I'm like, well, I live in Kansas City, and it was the middle of February, and we were due for a blizzard. And so you just don't schedule stuff when you know that's going to happen. And I told them, I'm like, this is not a good time. And I live in a very small house, so not very many people can come. And they said, please just do what we ask, and you'll be fully supported. And so I did. And on the evening, that was suggested, I got like 44 people in my tiny little living room and dining room, and they came in and spoke through me and did a group healing, and then they answered questions for hours from the group, anything you can think of. And a lot of it was stuff I had no idea of. I mean, some people were like engineers and stuff, and were asking all these crazy questions of things I don't have an education in, and answers were coming out. And so towards the end, there was one lady who's quite, she was kind of a skeptic. And she said, but by that time she was starting to wonder, some really cool information was coming out and she was feeling good. And she said, I want to know who we're talking to. How do we know you're not demons or something? And the voice that was coming through me laughed and said, well, if you want to know the truth, we're you. We're you on a different frequency. We're you having evolved to a higher level. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that you do what you have already done. In quantum physics, we know that all things exist forever, all at once in the same place. There's no real past or future. It's not linear. It's all in one place. And they said, whatever you tune into, that frequency, that's your reality. So they were saying, we live on a higher frequency because of what you do, what all of you in this room and people like you do in this particular incarnation, in this lifetime. Humankind does something phenomenal to jump over the threshold of staying stuck in the third dimensional, slow moving, dualistic kind of, control, fear-based life that you normally live in this place. You all get together and you finally learn how to work together, or most of you do, enough that it's critical mass, and you switch your focus to a higher frequency, and that's your reality, which is much closer to the one that we live in. And they said the reason why we're here tonight is to make sure that you remember, or you start remembering, what it is you do to make this happen. Because of you, we exist. And if you don't do this, in your lifetime, we won't exist in ours, which is hard to get your mind around, but it's fascinating. And she said, well, who are you then? And they said, we're a group entity. We're a group consciousness, but we are all still have individual qualities because we all have gifts, but we work together as a group entity. You can call us either the star teachers or the teachers, because we don't really have names where we live. We've evolved past that egoic need for labels, because labels cause separation, and separation is what we're trying to help you get over. We're all about fostering unity consciousness in your group. So the star teachers have been with me my whole life, but as a conscious connection constantly since that day. And you'll see me do a lot of work with them online. I do free global Zooms, for instance, or YouTube lives where people come and they interact with them. They always usually give a really pertinent message for what's going on or how we're doing. And then they usually do some sort of a group experience. And I just kind of get out of the way and they speak and they take people on a journey, and then they open the floor to questions. And it's always mind-boggling. But so the star teachers are kind of the main group that I channel now. But anyone comes through who wants to. So.
It sounds like you've lived a fascinating life.
I guess I have. I've had a very wonderful life, and it continues to get more and more fascinating. I just always, as a kid, I thought everybody lived this way. So, and maybe they do, but they don't remember it. It's kind of like, with what you would call an abduction or close encounters for experiencers, a lot of them don't remember things. And then that's why they like to come to me, use quantum hypnosis and get in there and find out.
So we could go down a lot of different avenues with you. I mean, it's kind of almost hard to ask you a question because I don't know which direction is the best direction to go in. So do you want to discuss the grays, or do you want to discuss the beings that you channel now, the ones you just talked about, or what would you like to discuss that you think would be most interesting to the people?
Well, I think what might be interesting to your viewers and your listeners is the film that we made that's been out for about a year called Alien Abduction Answers.
John Yost.
John Yost.
How's he doing?
One of my besties. I think he was, for those of people who don't know, John Yost is the filmmaker / experiencer, star of this film. It was his idea to make this film, and we made the film. It's become very popular. It's been given high awards, and helped a lot of people. But it's the first, we realized, as we were filming just his session, then we realized, oh, this isn't just about filming a session. This is about talking about experience and experiencers. And so we got more people involved. Everyone in the film, pretty much, other than Whitley Strieber, are my clients and now very good friends. But and it kept growing, and it grew to where we wanted to have someone like Whitley in the film. Well, he was the one we wanted. He was the one John wanted to kind of give the expert's view on what we were covering in the film. But we knew as we were even wrapping up the film, it wasn't just going to be one film. There were two more coming. This was about just saying, this is really happening and you're not alone. And there are lots and lots of people like you. We're speaking to the everyday person in the first film. So you're not alone, and here are some things you can do if you need help or want to find a new tribe or learn more or whatever. The second film is more about looking into other forms, other ways that people initiate contact, and there's so many, as so many ways of doing things: OBEs, NDEs, psychic work, oracle readings, pendulums, remote viewing, all, plant medicines. There's all kinds of practices. So that film is the second one. And then the third one that's projected is, now what do you do once now we know how to do all this? What do we do with it, and how do we best help the world, right? Move up into joining the cosmic community, if you will. So we were just getting started on the second film this year when John found out. He started having a lot of pain. He got really sick. And he found out that he has very aggressive late-stage pancreatic cancer. And John, as you know, is a brilliant person, a bibliophile, a great researcher, one of the kindest, most loving and generous people I know. And once he found out, he set on a journey to discover what might be the best way to overcome this, because usually when you get that diagnosis, it's also a death sentence. It's probably the most deadly cancer in the world. And, they were honest with him. They said, less than 1% of people survive this. And pretty much they told him, if you don't take the traditional, chemotherapy, terrible surgery, cutting out half of the stuff in his body and get on all these machines and everything, you won't live more than 10 or 11 months. And he said, and if I do go that route, what's my prognosis? And they said, you might get a couple of good years in. He had just gotten news that he's having a brand new grandchild being born in, I think, November. And they said, you'll at least get to see your grandchild being born. And he just said, that's not good enough. There has to, he just, by now the ETs have been working with him consciously, and these other beings, and they were just saying, don't accept this. So he started researching. He found a place that offers a revolutionary type of treatment here in the United States, that has an almost 100% cure rate, not remission rate, but cure rate for many forms of aggressive cancer, including pancreatic cancer. And so he decided he was going to go for that, and then realized, no one's going to pay for this but me, because it's not part of our traditional healthcare system, so insurance won't cover it. So he went ahead and said yes to it, and then we began. His son started a GoFundMe, and we've done a lot of other things, and we've just been fundraising, trying to keep him there for the full 12 weeks to be cured of this, because he has a lot of work to do. And now we're pretty sure he is going through this because part of his work might be to blow the lid off of the healthcare system with his filmmaking too. If he gets cured of this terrible cancer with this revolutionary form of therapy, why isn't everybody using it, and why isn't it available to everyone, and why isn't insurance paying for it? So there's a lot there, but to go back to answer your question, this week is the toughest week he's been through so far, therapy-wise. They did some very aggressive things, like they literally pinpoint the outside of the tumor. I think that it's on his pancreas, or in his pancreas, but it's also wrapped around some stuff. They pinpoint with kind of a camera needle thing and put the treatment right there in that spot, so it doesn't go and ruin the rest of the body. But he's in a lot of pain. He gets no sleep. I think he's lost 85 pounds this year. He was a big burly guy, and now he looks he looks great, but you can tell he's very tired.
So
but
where's
so high.
Where's this place he's getting the treatment at?
The place is called Envita Medical Center, I think, ENVITA, and it is in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it's a phenomenal place. He was telling me a couple of weeks ago that it was either he or his wife, his beautiful wife Lisa, was telling me that they actually witnessed a man. How people ring the bell when they're finished with their chemotherapy treatments or their radiation treatments or whatever in our normal culture. This man came in and rang the bell because he came back to be tested, and he was also given a death sentence with his cancer, and he has absolutely zero markers in his body for cancer. It's gone. And they said, talk about, when we're tired, when he's in pain, when he doesn't think he can go through one more of these very difficult treatments that take 5 to 6 hours at a time, each one costs like $30,000. Just when he thinks he can't do it, someone will come in and ring that bell and say, keep going, because it's real. This is real, and it works, and it's wonderful, and you're going to be so glad when you did. So he has very high spirits, but his physical body is still struggling. Now, having said that, I will say the last time they did the comparative testing, he was already more than half, the markers were more than half lessened from when he started on his cancer. And so that's phenomenal. I think he's only been taking it 4 or 5 weeks, and it's already gone down more than half. So this is very encouraging. But thank you for asking. Yeah. And I would say if anybody wants to, help this person, even if you don't know them, you can just go to my website or any of my social pages. They all go by Debz Shakti, and you can see right there how to give, even if it's $1 or $2 or a prayer or anything. We would be very grateful, because this man needs to live a little bit longer and complete his purpose.
Okay, so what would you like to talk about?
Oh, okay. So I wanted to talk about the film a little bit, because I think it's important that your listeners understand that there's way more going on than just, lights in the sky, which is cool. If you have ever seen them, it's very cool, or if you've seen a UFO, or now they call it UAP, it's very cool. But, or maybe you've seen a physical being, or a shape, or had a telepathic message, but you may not understand the scope of this. This is more than just one type of being. This is more than, it's consciousness. We're talking about consciousness and how all consciousness is connected. As we said before with quantum physics, everything is part of the same energy, and energy never dies. It's all connected. We are all connected to everything, to everyone. When you really, really get your mind around it, and I think that's where NDEs come in again, you kind of get that realization that, oh wow, I'm connected to every one of these souls. I'm not separate. What I do affects them, and what they do affects me. When you really grasp that, consciousness it's about exploring the self, isn't it? And so this film it's a deeply moving film. It talks to many different people, just like regular people, like you and I. And then there are some experts that are on there too, that people would recognize. But really what it's trying to do is get people to understand, not only is this real, but more than likely, and I believe this is true, we all have these encounters. Some people just aren't ready yet to remember them, and many people don't understand them. And that's why it's important to not hide or stuff your feelings about it or your memories. It's important to talk about them. And that, I think we're living in an exciting time where at least it's part of the public conversation now. For better or for worse, I don't like to watch the news, but you can't escape the national or the global conversation about us being visited. And now, even the powers that want to stay in power are saying, yeah, we're pretty sure some of that's not from here and that we're not alone. But they always like to put a fear-based spin on it. So, so they can continue to take advantage of that, like we don't want them invading our airspace and hurting national security and all that. But that's baloney. It depends on what frequency what vibrational state, what feeling state you maintain as to what your experience in life is going to be anyway. So if you are a loving, open, person interested in new things and not living in fear, more than likely your encounters are not going to be frightening. But we brainwash our children from birth to be afraid of anything that is not like them or that is unknown. And so that fear manipulation, which is a control mechanism, as you know, for society, it's just perpetuated constantly. So I believe it's up to people like you and I to allow people to speak their feelings. And I probably over half of the people I get coming to me for this subject, and please hear, I work with everybody for any kind of situation. I'm not just an abduction therapist, but or an ET encounter therapist. But over 50% of those who were coming to me for ET or paranormal experiences or abduction type things are terrified or have been, like John was when he was terrified when he was a 7-year-old boy, and he lied about what happened for most of his life, and it really was causing him a lot of suffering. But it's when he went in through this process to be able to see things very clearly, and then suddenly he realized what it was all about. And I can tell you, to a person, in fact, it's funny, people will even come to me still for, not very often anymore, but come to me for, I need to lose weight and I can't get my head around it, or I need to stop smoking, or I need to clear up my relationship. When we go in there, there's always something about close encounters with some sort of other, non-local consciousness that kind of set them on their path. And it's almost like there's a time release mechanism in every person when they wake up and start asking questions about their life, about what's going on, about why things are happening, why do they keep doing the same things over and over again, or why do they keep having this same dream or whatever. And when we go in there and they remember what happened, number one, it's, they're relieved of fear because it's very clear, and there's really positive stuff going on most of the time. And number two, they're given a call to action. They're like pointed to their purpose. And then suddenly things start to fall in place in their life. And they realize, oh, that's why this happened. This happened because I have to do this now. And so it's really satisfying work. But I wanted to speak about the film a little bit because it's important that people understand that they're not alone. And if you've never seen the film, it's streaming everywhere. In fact, it's even streaming for free, I think, on Tubi still. So people can watch it and maybe have an internal or a group conversation about it.
So would you like to go through some of your encounters, or would you prefer to talk about your clients in a general sort of way, or how would you like to take this?
Yeah, well, it's been really fascinating. It's funny how, as I was just describing, people go through their lives. I think we've been programmed in our culture to believe life just happens to us. It's like arbitrary. And whatever you get, you have to deal with it. But that's not true. Everything builds on itself. And so for people to, I don't know, I really enjoy my work. And I think I could talk about some of my clients with, of course, not giving any names or identifying characteristics, but they're just so special to me. Every one of them is so special, and they make me love humanity so much more because I see them as a soul, not as a human robot that was programmed from birth to do these certain things at this certain time, and be born, go to school, go to college, get married, get a job, have kids, work your butt off, and then maybe you're lucky enough to retire, and then you die. It's just so dumb. Like, why would we think that that's all there is? So the experiencers, especially that I have worked with, have had some really great stories, and they're, some of them are similar. And in fact, what's really fun is some of them know each other from like being on ships together, or in, in John's case, he wasn't taken to a ship. He was taken to a subterranean, like a cave kind of facility. But what I wanted to say here is, even stranger and more fascinating, if you can imagine that, is suddenly in the last couple of years, I've been getting people who say that they either suspect or know that they were involved in like the MJ12 things, like Montauk, like this, all of these deep state programs where children or adults were experimented on, for psi stuff. I've worked with a ton of former, I don't want to give, but former three-letter agency high-ranking officials and low-ranking people who were, in the military, for instance, serving under these programs and participating in some of this stuff, all of this experimentation and everything. And I'm telling you what, there is so much going on that people don't know, and that is amazing and fascinating. The world that you're looking at as you look outside or you turn on your TV, that's just a superficial glazing over of what we really are able to do even right now, and have been able to for many decades.
So what's the strangest area that you've come to understand? Do you have people who are part of the secret space program? I hear that that's real. I didn't believe in it. I didn't believe in that at all until I talked to Misha, and then she said that she was a part of that also.
Yes, and I agree with you. I thought you're getting into kind of Hokieville now, especially when, you have some people who get really famous talking about it and making movies about it and everything, and then later on come out and say, no, I made it all up because I wanted the money or whatever. We've had a couple of those, and people sometimes are compromised because of their life choices, even though they have good information to share, and people just judge them for that. But some of the most interesting, incredible, mind-blowing ones have been the secret space program, Montauk kids, and other programs that weren't done at Montauk, but at other facilities with children. And all the ones that I have worked with, the children were children usually of military parents, or parents who were in one of the three-letter agencies nearby these different places. And so, I have deep relationships with some of these people now, and I have to keep deep confidentiality, as you can imagine, to protect them, and their families. But I absolutely know that we have 0-point energy devices, that we have anti-gravity devices, that we travel to other planets and dimensions and have for a long time, and other timelines, if that's what you want to call them. I call them frequencies, it doesn't matter. But we are able to do this and have been able for quite some time. There are people walking among us every day who have traveled and been to another planet or another dimension, and maybe been gone for 30 or 40 years and come back, and only a few minutes have passed here. And so no one was aware. And yet they carry with them all of this information. Sometimes they say their minds are wiped. And that's what brings them to me, is they have this niggling feeling that they don't remember a lot of what happened in their life. And indeed, they don't. They just kind of glossed it over. And when we go in there, many of these people didn't believe in any of this and thought it was BS. When we go in there and they start just, narrating what they're revisiting, it's pretty undeniable. I mean, it's really wild. And I will tell you, I'm almost certain that none of them know each other consciously, and none of them refer to each other. How they're finding me now, I don't know. But that's been some really strange, fascinating, and I have to say some really heart-wrenching work, especially when it has to do with the children. Some of these children, that's all their childhood was, and they just don't remember a lot of their childhood, until they go in there.
So have you come to understand anything about the hierarchy of, like, I hear different things about who controls the planet. When I was 40 years younger, or around that age, I was coming out of a MUFON, or I was coming out of somewhere. I think it was a MUFON meeting in Austin, Texas, but it could have been, like a hypnotherapy training session or something. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, I was walking out of something I was doing at the time, and the girl who was walking with me was an abductee, and I'm a contactee. So I've never been taken that I know of, and I don't have any implants, and I don't have any PTSD, and I don't have any of the symptoms of an abductee, but I have made contact with various beings. But I'm talking with her. I don't remember what I was saying at the time, but she said to me, she said, "You know that aliens control this planet, right?" And I looked at her and I said, "No, it's not aliens, it's disincarnates." And she goes, "No, it's aliens." And I said, "No, it's disincarnates." And we were like little kids going back and forth. And we kept, doing that for like 30 seconds or a minute or two. And finally I said, okay, you win. Aliens control the planet. Guess who controls aliens? It's disincarnates. I win, disincarnates. So, I am a child of the paranormal more than I'm a child of aliens. And even though I've had my share of alien encounters, they're not nearly as numerous as yours or most people's, and they're very specialized and only came when I was in certain circumstances. But the point I want to make is that I'm really a child of the paranormal. That's my area of expertise. And it's not necessarily positive paranormal, and I don't want to necessarily get into my story, but have you, here, this is a prerequisite for a question. There's a question in there somewhere. Have you come to any understanding of the hierarchy of how this planet is run, who runs it, what is going on? I hear it's the reptilians, and I really don't know if that's valid. And so have you come to any understanding of a hierarchy of anything in any shape or form?
Well, in this is what they tell me. This, where we live, third dimensional Earth life as a human, is a construct. And it's a construct that we built ourselves to have, it's kind of like a science lab. And so we've been here, some of us, many times. And most of us who have been here many times have finally decided we've pretty much, gotten our fill of what we've gotten everything out of it that we thought we needed. And it's time to go explore more, because life is ever evolving. There's no even, source, God, universal mind, whatever you want to call the top of the food chain, if you want to talk about hierarchy, it's not static. It's also evolving and learning and growing. So it's always just this moving target, right? But what they tell me and what I feel deep in my bones is that whatever sustained conscious feeling state or even subconscious feeling state, whatever feeling state you are sustaining for the most part is what your reality is, or insert the word timeline. So in some people's timeline, there are scary guys who look like giant lizards who are warlords and they want to take over and enslave everybody, okay, and take over the planet. And it's been an agenda for many eons and so forth. That's one frequency. In another frequency, benevolent ET beings or interdimensionals came and met with our governments many years ago, including President Eisenhower, and set off to kind of slowly bring baby up in the consciousness world so that we could join a cosmic community. So you get into the Valiant Thor stories. In a lot of people's minds, because they have come into this world born into the programming that, the Hollywood version, I call it, of ET contact or paranormal experience, which I think it's all the same. It's just different facets of the same jewel, if you will, different points of perspective of consciousness expressing itself in infinite ways. Some of those people have had really scary experiences or ecstatic experiences. You think about even in the Christian Bible, for instance, and in most of the holy texts from different religions, someone always sees an angel, and some of those people are blinded by seeing an angel, and they're afraid, and they bow down, and they have to take the commandment of the angel and go do what the angel said, and that changes their lives. Where in others, in the same books, someone sees an angel and they give them tidings of great joy, and that sets their life off on a different pattern. So what I can say is it depends on who you are and what you believe and how you're maintaining your feeling state about what you believe as to what your reality is. So there are infinite versions of you. And okay, so what I was saying is quantum physics teaches us or theorizes, and we're very certain of this. I'm very certain of it because I've experienced it. There are infinite universes, and there are infinite versions of you in these universes. Some are so much like you that you might have one more hair on your head in one reality, and that's the only difference, but it makes that reality completely different. Others may be you don't look like yourself at all. You might be you might be a woman in another reality. You might be a beam of light, you might be a sound wave. This is what I think a lot of the ancient traditions were trying to explain as reincarnation. It's not a linear, like you live a life and you do this and then you have to, come back in the next life and fix it and all this. All lives exist all at once forever in the same place. And depending on your focus, your tuning mechanism inside your own being, your consciousness, is what your reality is. And you switch through these realities trillions of times a day. But for the most part, you're in kind of a cluster of the ones that are serving whatever it is you're trying to learn or discover or teach or whatever. So in my reality, you asked, who's running this planet? In my reality, we're running the planet, but we're doing it without knowing how, or even that we are. It's like you give, you tell a little kid to go out and play, and they sneak dad's car keys and go out and get in the car and start the car up, but that's all they know how to do. And, pretty soon either they're crashing the car into a tree, or someone freaks out and says, oh, they've got the car keys. There are as many versions of who's running this planet as there are versions of you. And so I love that, because you get to choose your reality, but people don't want that responsibility. They don't believe that they have all the power in the universe to create or to manifest or to change. And so human beings are really outward referring. They don't think that they're, again, they've been programmed to believe they're not good enough to, for instance, run the world, or they're not even good enough, they're not even smart enough, or whatever, to have a good life unless there's some authority figure telling them how to do something, or sell them something to help them be more acceptable so that they can sort of do things. So, in my version, the one that I live every day, we're running this world, and we're starting to become more conscious of it. And when we take the reins back and actually take self-responsibility for it, we can make some very big changes very quickly and turn this into, the kind of world that people want to live in. But we have to learn to get past divisiveness, labeling, blaming, negativity, control, fear, all that stuff. And that's a big leap for many people. But I think that's why people are starting to have more and more conscious encounters with ETs, interdimensionals, the paranormal, because if nothing else, it makes you ask, is there something more than what I've been just going through the daily grind? Right? Even some of the shocking, scary stuff that you probably have dealt with in the paranormal field. I have too. I'm not scared of it, but the people I serve can be very frightened. I've had people come and ask me to exorcise demons from their homes or from their loved ones. And so I meet people where they are, and I speak their language according to their belief system. I'm very respectful. I also let them speak their feelings and be in their feelings. But I also like to help them experience maybe something a little finer and see that there is a way to take a breath and take control over things so that they can make things better. And I think that's what my purpose is here.
So you've done some exorcisms.
Yeah, if you want to call it that. I'm not a priest. I'm not designated to do that, but I will tell you that I have dealt with people who had what they call demonic possession. And, here's the thing here's a big understanding that I've gained in my work and in my life, and in the wonderful tutelage of the star teachers and other beings that work with me, Frillian and so forth. Everything in the universe is part of source, or whatever you want to call it, the big energy that holds it all together, right? Creation, let's just call it creation. Everything in creation is neutral until an observer perceives it and assigns a value to it. We know in physics, they say, in quantum physics, they say something doesn't really exist until an observer perceives it. And the observation, by just the act of observation, that situation is changed. It's given a value. if you ever go into physics and study quantum physics and study the double slit experiment, that's a very easy way to show that, you know. But we won't go into that right now, but your listeners can go in and look it up and see what that means. But everything is neutral until we assign it a value or a label. Okay, so I give an example where you have two people standing on the edge of a cliff looking out over an ocean. And one person is in bliss. They smell the salt air, they hear the waves, they can't wait to get their toes in the water. They love the energy of the ocean. It's so beautiful. You know, it makes our planet so unique. And the person next to them is quaking in fear and wants to run away because in their experience, their family was killed instantly in a tsunami wave, right? But they're both looking at the same ocean. They're assigning the ocean a value, a label, which then expresses within themselves emotionally and otherwise that changes their whole reality. The person who loves the ocean wants to be there forever and be with it and just enjoy it. And the person who is frightened of the ocean wants to run away. And it's the same ocean. And that's how life is. So are there demons? I believe there are, because life expresses itself along it's not a linear continuum, but it is a continuum of infinite expression. And depending on the heaviness or lightness, let's just call it that as a value of your feeling state, which is brought on by your belief system, by your past experiences, by the things you hold on to that you say make you you, that's what your experience is going to be crystallized around. So if you grew up from birth, thinking that there are scary ghosts who are going to come in and rip your grandmother's heart out in her sleep and tear up the house and take you to hell. More than likely, you were programmed to believe that because that's what pretty much Hollywood and folklore and all that perpetuated. Or maybe you had past experiences. We say past, there is no past, but had experiences in other lives. I call them alternate life realities or quantum lives, where you, experimented with that kind of thing. But if you could just zoom out, if people could just zoom out and go up really high in their soul, within their soul, to the place where they can see that there are infinite versions going on out there and everyone's expressing in a different way, where you can choose a different one. You can choose to see the same thing from a different point of perspective and not be afraid. And if you've ever, I think that's why having an NDE, and I'm not telling people to go out there and, try to have one, because close encounter experiences, transcendental experiences, that's why I'm so big about teaching meditation and yoga and breath work and things like that. There are many pathways to getting to a high vibrational state where you can be that calm, objective observer and look at life and think, oh, wow, I could put any value on that experience. And no matter what it is, I can be okay with it because there is no death. Really, all of the things that we count as fearful, frightening, scary, evil, dark, all of that, that's all from fear. And the main fear, the lowest level of fear, the base of all fears is the fear of death. When you know that you don't die, then what's the point of being afraid? It's more of being more an intrepid explorer and just maybe asking, what is there to be learned here? Or if I change my vibrational state, if I bring myself up in my state by being grateful or happy, or breathing a different way so my body starts to feel differently, then I'm looking at the same thing, but from a different vantage point, and it's a different thing altogether. I don't know if that helps.
So, do you want to go through any? I assume you don't want to talk about such exorcisms.
Oh, no, it doesn't matter. I mean, I have literally seen people, who truly believe that they are possessed by a demonic entity. They've suffered and they are causing everybody around them to suffer, and they feel insane, and they're at, it's kind of their last chance. And then when we bring them into a different vibrational state, if I can just get in there and get them to relax and breathe differently, and the body's endocrine system starts to send a different chemical cocktail into the cells, then suddenly they start to see and feel what's going on within them as something completely different. And they either release it, and the way I do it with people is to transmute. I say, yeah, okay, you have this being in you. You don't want it. It's a very unhappy, anything that is dark or evil obviously isn't happy. And it's maybe woefully forgetting of its own divinity. So let's get in there and work with it. I usually have conversations with it. Same thing when I go to a building and they say the building's possessed by entities. I just talk to them. It's all you, basically, so it's talking to a darker place within yourself. And when you can do that, the situation is healed, it's transmuted. But for people who are very religious and they just say the devil's in their child, then it's about getting in there and working with them to understand that being has finally released and gone into the light. And that's what that work is about. It's about raising the energy of everyone involved, including the entity, especially the entity, because that's a piece of yourself that has been left behind, I believe. But yeah, I actually, one of the worst cases I ever saw was an entire house got ripped apart before things shifted. And it was something right out of a horror movie, but it wasn't scary to me. It was just a challenge. It was quite a challenge because I'm dealing with people's feelings and, a house.
So if somebody was not religious, but they told you they had attaching spirits, what would you tell them to do?
Well, it would take getting to know them a little bit. I gain rapport with people. As you know, you were a hypnotherapist before. You know that you gain rapport with people you're working with. First, find out a little bit about them, and then I speak to them in their own language in a place and I get them to a place where they're comfortable enough, and then work with them energetically. And again, the beings usually work with me to help them go into a different energy space where they can kind of heal. And I've had, this is so funny. I've had so many people come to me who are not just skeptics, but who are true dyed-in-the-wool atheists who say they don't believe in anything supernatural or whatever spiritual. And they come out of the session saying, I think I might have been closed-minded. And I think there's more for me to discover here. But what I tell everyone is if they do this work with me, is really you're working with yourself. You can't escape yourself. You know, Edwin Schrodinger once said, "There's only one consciousness in the universe, and that consciousness is you, and all the other versions of you, the other reflections of you." So, you know, you don't have to buy into what I'm saying, but that's my reality, and it's been working, and it's been helping a lot of people. So I hope I'm on the right track, but at least I'm having a fascinating, good time with it.
So, if you wanted to entertain the people listening, and you, instead of necessarily teaching them something, if you just wanted to talk about things that you've experienced or that your clients have experienced, that would, like, for instance, you mentioned that the secret space program was real. Okay, so what else that people don't necessarily believe in that you've worked with your clients on, that you can you say about, talk about, that you know is real, that the general population has yet to wrap their minds around? Is there any area that, besides the secret space program, like, have you worked with super soldiers, or have you worked with
Yes.
So
Yes.
what is, in your experience, what is a super soldier? Not from what you've heard in the media, but from your clients. What have you learned about that?
Yeah, a lot of the what you would deem or label the super soldiers, most of the ones I've worked with were what I call the Montaulk kids. Not that they actually were at Montaulk, some were, some weren't, but they were young kids who had very special qualities. They were identified early on, and like I said, most of them that I know of anyway, that I've worked with, came from military or government, federal government families anyway, and so they went to what was, you know, labeled maybe or advertised as special school, boarding schools or whatever, and from early ages were worked on and groomed and, how shall I say, exercised the side gifts that we all have. By the way, I want all of your listeners to understand, no one exists as a human on this planet right now who does not have psychic abilities, telepathic abilities, energy abilities, and so forth, healing abilities. We all do, but a lot of these things have been turned to the off position. I like to say all those little switches in your DNA and in your energy systems have been switched to off until a certain time is when you're ready to bring them back online. And I think that's what you're seeing now. A lot of people are coming online. That's why there's so much contact with not just ETs, but with the paranormal. It's a shock value thing. It makes you, it's almost like it's a timing mechanism that turns us on. So these children were, and sadly, some of the ones I've worked with are very damaged because these programs were run by humans, very high-level humans with nefarious, you know, they always seem to want to just be, it's about war, it's about having the upper hand in war, finance, politics, all that. And so these children were given drugs, they were put through torturous exercises and things like that to kind of jumpstart the timing mechanism. And we're, you know, the plan was to develop them into super soldiers. You know, that the kind of glib movie that George Clooney made a long time ago called The Men Who Stare at Goats, that was part of that program too. You know, it was psyops. But it was about making sure that the military had the upper hand in you know, psychic development and all that. But some of these children, then once they were released back out in the world because the program got tanked or it got changed or whatever, they're just let go with no support. And most of them had memory wipes. But as you know, you can't really wipe someone's memory out. It's in there. It's all recorded. It exists forever. And when it is not acknowledged over time, it's like pressing down a spring too long. Well, when you press a spring down too long, it boings out. And these people are waking up. A lot of these people are about the same age, and they're all starting to wake up and say, I don't remember a whole lot of my childhood, but what I do, I remember in dreams, and it's horrible and nightmarish. And what does this mean? And we go into it, and then we find out that they were part of the super soldier program. And then, of course, I do work with some adults who have been, you know, they've gone to other planets, other times, other dimensions, and all that. And some of it's fascinating and cool. Some of it was horribly scary. Some of it was, they didn't even say they wanted to do it. They just got pushed into it because they were a soldier already. And they've come out on the other end damaged. And some have come out brilliant. You know, it just depends on where they land and what they do with it.
So what's the strangest stories you've heard that you believe are true from some of your clients?
Wow, we could talk forever. I will have to say, I think what was really shocking for me was I don't watch normal TV. I haven't since 2001, and so, you know, but as we get older, my husband and I, and we're both very busy, but we've you know, we have a TV and we get on Netflix or something once in a while when we have a snow day or something. And that program Stranger Things came on. And I started watching it, and I was just internally quaking because I'm like, they're talking about some of my kids. The kids in that program, they're talking about the kids I've been working with, the people who are grown up now, who are these Montaulk kids or these, you know, the MK Ultra kids. And so.
You mean kids like Stuart Swerdlow?
Yeah, like so many of the people we know. You and I both know some of these. I could name names, and I'm not going to, but what I was going to say is
only the people that have come out publicly and stated they were part of that,
yeah.
who you believe were telling the truth.
Yeah, there's one I can say a name that I know personally. It's Penny L.A. Sheldon, and she was the original 11 in the you know, in Montauk. She was the brilliant kid that they experimented on, and she has all of these fantastic gifts. She now spends all of her time as a broadcaster like you, you know, exploring all this stuff and getting. She's quite active in getting the truth out. But I didn't. You know, I just kept thinking this is like my kids. So after the first few seasons, I looked it up, and they said at the onset of the show, it was supposed to be called the Montauk Kids, and someone threatened to sue the bejeebers out of the makers of the show unless they changed it up a little bit and changed the name. So that's why it's called Stranger Things. But so many of the things you see on that show, Mike, are things that have come out in my sessions with those people. I'm not kidding you one bit.
Regarding going to other dimensions, since you've mentioned that a couple times, we want to keep this as interesting as we can.
Sure.
So Have you personally ever gone to another dimension?
Of course, like I said, we all do trillions of times a day, but consciously, most of us don't realize we're doing it. Anytime you do something in your imagination or daydream or go somewhere in a thought, you're in a different frequency or dimension. But consciously, yes, I've gone through many dimensions, and some of them are, it's ineffable. You can't describe in words what it's like. Some are similar to ours, but the one that I know best, that I love the best, is the one where the teachers live. And it's like if we put ourselves here on this layer of existence, they're here. But they say they're just scratching the surface of what goodness is in life. And so they're evolving too, but they're constantly trying to help us so that, we can keep moving up. But in that frequency, there is no longer it's not in a physical, it can be, you can have a physical form if you want to, and you can have a physical experience if you want to, but for the most part it's energetic. And they have evolved, that place, that dimension has no duality, so there's no competition, right? There's no good and bad, dark and light, you know.
Do you have a name for that dimension or space?
No, because they don't have labels for anything. Again, that's an ego attachment, labeling. So like I said, it's ineffable. It's a feeling state. But I will tell you, it's beautiful because I think that's why there is, in our global consciousness that we all share, there are many archetypes of things. And one of the archetypes that continues to pervade our mythology, if you will, our daydreams, our wishes, our hopes, is that of Shangri-La. You know what I'm talking about? It's a place where people all get along, and there's abundance for everybody, and everyone is treated equally. But each person gets to express their gifts in the most perfect way. And so as they do that and they stay in their kind of their happiness doing what they do, like this person over here weaves baskets if they're in a physical place, this person over here grows flowers, this person over here creates music, but they work in a collaborative collective, and it makes this beautiful kind of, for want of another word, paradise. And that's how these beings work. But they also know that to maintain that high state of vibrational being and keep what they have to be of service to others who are not there yet. So that's what they're doing with us. And I believe that other beings are doing that for them. If you want to talk about a hierarchy, that's a hierarchy, but it's all blended. It's just what you constantly tune into. So for me, having visited that place, it's everything you could ever want, because people just love each other and they respect each other, because how can you not love someone who is a part of you? How can you judge or hate someone who is a part of you? The only reason we judge and hate other people is because there's something in us that we don't love.
So, can you describe, other than it's all bliss and everybody loves everybody and everybody gets to do whatever they want to do and there's not any polarity, can you remember the details of when you were there, and can you go through an experience when you were there ever?
Yes. When I've been there, for instance, because I'm still very, I don't want to say attached, but very connected to my human experience, I go there with the context of things still being physical or semi-physical, but at a higher level vibrational state. So there are buildings and structures, and yet they're all made of really beautiful, finely tuned crystal. Everything is crystal, and there's such an energy, and everything is exuding that energy, and that music. There's those sounds again. It's all pervading, and yet it's not something that bothers anyone. It's something that the collective has created and continues to create and hone, and and they don't eat food. They live off starlight, and they say we're very close to that right now. We're getting really close to that, and you see people moving more and more to eating foods to remain healthy that are closest to the energy of the sun, which would be plants. If you eat an animal, you're eating a being that had to eat the plants to get the energy of our star. Basically, everything has to live from starlight. But so there's nothing, I'm not going to judge anybody for eating an animal, but if you want to have a higher vibrational state over time in this place, you might want to eat more clean organic plants that were grown with love. If you grew it yourself, even extra points. But there, they don't physically eat food. They live off of, they take in the starlight.
So what did you do when you were there the last time you were there?
I visited many places, but one of the places I love to go is called the Great Library. And I go there, and in this place, again, it's just looks like giant crystals coming out of the ground, but it's a beautiful structure. It's been purposely made, and the beings take me in there. And the library itself is crystals. They're long, skinny crystals, for me, about this size. And you pick them up and hold it, and instantly you're able to get the information you need on whatever it is you want from wherever. It's like this great hall of records, kind of. It's beautiful. And
so did you go there for a particular purpose, or did you go there just to go there?
I think I was taken there many times as a child, and I didn't know what that was, but I really enjoyed it because I was always treated well and loved it, and it was beautiful. But when I decide to go there, I often go there in OBE, in out-of-body experience, or in meditation. I just do it in meditation now. Most of the time it's the same for me. And sometimes I go there just for more learning, or because I want the comfort of being with those wonderful beings who actually love each other. Especially, if I've had a bad day where everybody's been arguing around me and there's so much war and all this, then I will go there, and it's almost like it's like a respite. But several times I have been taken there. If you want to talk about, abductees, I've been taken there, but with my own agreement, because I needed some healing of some sort. I've had physical healing done there in one of those structures, and it was a giant crystal pyramid, if you can imagine that. Crazy energy. I have several times in my life been told that I was either not going to live very much longer, or that I was going to be, completely disabled. And every time I was taken to that pyramid and, had processes and just basically it's just those beings there giving love and doing the same thing they must have done to my client on the table, in this office. And then it completely blew all the doctors away eventually, because I, showed them up on their prognosis. So There are many things that I've done there, and many skills that I've learned there that I've been able to bring back. And I think that's the higher the vibrational state that a person can maintain, the more skills they are able to tap into, whether they physically go to one of these places or it's just, there is no place. It's all right here. It's all right here in your heart, basically. The great singularity, I always say, is in your heart. But you're tapping into part of that spectrum that is what is needed or desired. And you get to choose. And I think that's the great lie of our world right now, is that you don't have a choice. You're helpless. Do what we say and you'll get a little treat every once in a while if you're lucky. If you're not, too bad for you. No, you have a choice every single second of the day to have a good, happy, healthy life. But it takes work, it takes concentration, and it takes discipline. And a lot of people just don't want to deal with that right now. They feel like they're too tired.
You know who Daniel Brinkley is, right?
I don't think I do.
He got hit by lightning. He was out in a cabin in the woods, and he got killed by lightning. He went to the other side. He was dead for quite a while and came back, and he's died a number of times, and he's written quite a few books on the topic of near-death experiences because he's had a number of them. But in his story, when he died, he went to a city that sounds a lot like the one you're describing. It was a crystal city on the other side, but it wasn't a higher dimension on this side. It was in the afterlife. And it's kind of interesting that they have cities over there that on the other side that sound like the higher dimensions on this side. That's kind of an interesting.
And it just depends on what perspective you look at things from. I don't believe there is an other side. I think it's all this. It's all, there's no separation. It's just the different layers that we tune into. The other side is just, what we call ghosts are just us in a different frequency, probably trying to talk to us, or they're just as freaked out as we are when they see us, because something similar that's resonant with the person seeing a ghost is resonant in that other being, what you're calling a ghost. There is a connection. There's a bridge there that is energetically resonant, or you would not perceive each other. Okay, so I don't believe spirits live in another realm, so to speak. I believe they live. Can you still hear me? I think my AirPods just went out.
Yes, I can.
I think those people we call spirits or ghosts or whatever, they're just residing in a different wavelength than we are, in the same place where we are. But again, you don't have to buy into that. It's just my
it's just another perspective on reality.
Yeah. So
I think we've gone about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Do you have something you'd like to promote, or would you like to just talk? Is there a direction you want to go in that you think would be interesting to the listeners that we haven't talked about yet?
I don't know. I mean, we could go for days and years talking about all this stuff because it's infinite. Just as each person listening to this is infinite. But I think I'm going to lose power on these AirPods, and I'm going to have to go here pretty soon too.
Okay. Well, do you want to promote yourself, your website, or anything?
Sure. Well, what I would like to leave people with, though, is I admonish each person, I encourage each person to try to stay as open-minded and open-hearted as you possibly can whenever you are experiencing anything that is outside your day-to-day activities, whether it's a synchronicity or a coincidence, or you think you see a mist over here in the corner of your room, or you get a telepathic download, or you start to have memories of a scary experience from, another time. Just know that you are infinite, you are unlimited, you live forever, there is no death, and there's nothing to fear. But if you don't know how to conceptualize or understand what it is you're dealing with, seek someone out. All you have to do is ask. You know that saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears? Well, all you have to do is just get on the internet and put in a search word for whatever it is you're experiencing, and you're probably going to come up with people who would love to talk to you, groups, forums. I'm always available to people. I'm happy to speak with people and work with you. And if I can't, I will definitely. I have a lot of friends and contemporaries who can help you with what you're doing. I can hook people up with groups in your area, or get you into groups where you can find out where other people who are asking the same questions as you are. But don't just sit there and suffer or wonder alone. We're all one being, I think, facets of the same jewel, but we were meant to interact with each other and put these pieces together. So if anybody wants to get hold of me, you can just look me up. My website's debzshakti.com, DEBZSHAKTI.com. And I'm on all the socials, and all my social media pages are the same name, Debz Shakti. And, on my webpage, there's my email address, my phone number, all that. Guys can just get in touch with me. And if you want to see what I do, the website has not just a lot of descriptions of what I do and what I offer, but there's a whole media section on there with hundreds of free videos of channelings, of tutorials on how to raise your vibrational state and have some of these great experiences yourself. How to schedule with me if you want to have a service. Please know that every service I give, you also learn tools to do what we're doing in the service yourself, so that you don't need me anymore after the session if you don't want to. So there's education as well. So I think that's what I want to leave people with, and just leave them with this, that there is goodness in life. Life is mostly good. We've just been kind of stuck in a place where people like to manipulate others by saying it's not good, because when people are afraid and feeling down and helpless, they're much easier to manipulate. Don't buy into that anymore. You're awesome. You're strong as anyone else, and you have all the gifts anybody else has. Ask yourself, go inside, get still, and just ask yourself, what's next? What can I do next? And then just be still for a while, and watch things start to happen for you.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and thank you for coming on. And maybe next time, if you decide to come back, you can channel your people the next time.
Oh, I'd love to, Mike. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for letting me go on for so long. My universe is very large, so I think it encapsulates a lot of things. But I hope your listeners had a good time, and thank you for giving me so much of your time and energy as well. You're awesome.
Thank you very much for coming on. Let me stop.
Thank you.